You're at your cousin's engagement party. Her fiancé's dad walks over, looks at you, and casually asks, "So, are you two saving up for a house yet?" You laugh. You say something like, "Yeah, we're working on it." But on the drive home, you're quiet. Because the truth is, you've been renting the same apartment for 3 years. Your coworker just bought a house. Your parents keep telling you that rent is just throwing money away. And every time someone says, "You should really think about buying," you start wondering, am I actually falling behind? Because it feels like everyone else got the memo. Except you. But here's the problem. What if the advice you've been hearing your entire life is missing something? What if comparing rent to a mortgage payment is completely the wrong comparison? I used to believe buying was obviously better too, until I actually ran the numbers. And what I found changed the way I think about renting, buying, and building wealth. So today, we're going to do something simple. No hype. No, renting is always better. No, buying is the only way to build wealth. Just the math. And by the end, you'll have a much better idea of which decision actually makes sense for you. Let's start with the number. Everyone looks at. Imagine you're considering a $415,000 home. A similar place in the same neighborhood rents for about $2,100 a month. So you look at the mortgage. You put 10% down. That's $41,500. You finance $373,500 at a 6.75% fixed rate for 30 years. Your principal and interest payment? About $2,423 a month. And this is where most people stop. They look at $2,100 rent versus $2,423 mortgage, and they think, well, that's pretty close. Then comes the classic argument, at least the mortgage is building equity. Sounds convincing, except there's a problem. That $2,423 is not the cost of owning the house. It's just the mortgage payment, and a house has a lot more bills attached to it. The $2,423 house isn't really a $2,423 house. Let's add everything together. Property taxes? At roughly 1.1% of the home's value, that's about $380 a month. Homeowner's insurance? Let's say $150. Maintenance? A common rule of thumb is around 1% of the home's value per year. That's another $345 a month. Now add everything together. $2,423 mortgage, plus $380 taxes, plus $150 insurance, plus $345 maintenance. That gives us approximately $3,300 a month. Not $2,423, $3,300. And suddenly, the comparison looks very different. Rent, $2,100. True ownership cost, $3,300. That's a $1,200 monthly difference. And this is the first big idea I want you to remember. Don't compare rent to the mortgage payment. Compare rent to the true cost of owning, because that's where the real decision begins. But there's an even bigger problem. Even $3,300 isn't the number that matters most, because not every dollar you spend on a house does the same thing. Some of it builds equity, and some of it disappears forever. Look at that first mortgage payment. Out of roughly $2,423, about $2,101 goes to interest. Only around $322 actually reduces your loan balance. That $322 is building equity. The rest? Gone. Taxes? Gone. Insurance? Gone. Maintenance? Gone. Interest? Gone. So out of that roughly $3,300 monthly ownership cost, only about $322 is directly increasing your home equity in month 1, That means almost $3,000 is unrecoverable. And here's the uncomfortable part. That unrecoverable cost is actually higher than the $2,100 rent payment. So, in the first year, buying isn't automatically the cheaper way to live. In fact, from a purely cash cost perspective, it can be more expensive. And then there's the cost. People forget entirely. Imagine you buy the house, you settle in, you paint the walls, you buy furniture. You finally feel like this is home. Then 2 years later, you get a great job offer in another city, or your relationship changes, or your family situation changes, or you simply realize, I don't want to live here anymore. Now you have to sell, and selling isn't free. Maybe you paid around $12,000 in closing costs when you bought. Then, when you sell, you could face tens of thousands of dollars in commissions and other transaction costs. Let's say that $415,000 home appreciates to $440,000. That sounds like a $25,000 gain. Great, right? Not necessarily, because you might have spent roughly $12,000 getting into the house and close to $30,000 getting out. So that $25,000 increase in the home's value can disappear surprisingly fast. This is why time matters. If you buy a home and sell after 2 years, transaction costs can eat a huge part of the benefit. If you stay much longer, those costs get spread across more years. And that's one reason buying generally makes more sense when you genuinely expect to stay put for a long time. Now for the question that changes everything. What if the renter invests the difference? Remember that $1,200 gap? The homeowner spends it. The renter invests it. Every month. Let's say that $1,200 is invested consistently and earns an average 7% annual return over 30 years. That could grow to roughly $1.46 million. Pause there. Because this is where the argument usually gets interesting. The renter isn't throwing away money. They're paying rent, while potentially investing the money they didn't spend on ownership. And compounding is doing the heavy lifting. Of course, the homeowner isn't getting nothing. They are building home equity, the property may appreciate, and eventually the mortgage can be paid off. So this is not a story where renting always wins. It's a story where the answer depends on what you do with the difference. Because if the renter invests nothing, then the argument changes completely. The renting trap. Nobody talks about. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The invest the difference strategy only works if you actually invest the difference. Imagine you save $1,200 a month by renting, but instead of investing it, you buy a nicer car, order more takeout, take more vacations, upgrade your phone, and somehow, at the end of the month, the $1,200 is gone. Then you didn't create an investment advantage, you simply created more spending. And this is where buying has one huge advantage: forced discipline. Your mortgage doesn't care whether you're motivated this month. The payment still comes out. You're effectively forcing yourself to build equity. For some people, that structure is incredibly valuable. And if you know yourself well enough to admit, I probably won't invest the difference, that matters. The mathematically optimal decision on a spreadsheet isn't always the optimal decision for a real human being. Now let's talk about the other trap. You see your coworker buy a house, then your friend, then your cousin. Suddenly, buying feels normal, and renting starts feeling like you're failing. But here's the problem. You don't know their numbers. Maybe their income is twice yours. Maybe their parents helped with the down payment. Maybe they have 6 months of emergency savings. Maybe they plan to stay there for 15 years. Maybe they're stretching themselves dangerously thin. You're seeing the house. You're not seeing the spreadsheet behind it. And that's why one of the worst reasons to buy a house is everyone else is doing it. Your coworker's timeline isn't your timeline. Your parents' market isn't today's market, and your friend's financial situation isn't yours. So how do you actually decide? Forget the question, is buying better than renting? That's too broad. Ask 6 better questions. Number 1, how long will I realistically stay? If you're probably moving in 2 or 3 years, buying becomes much harder to justify. If you're confident you'll stay for 10 years, the calculation changes. Number 2, what's my true monthly ownership cost? Not just the mortgage, taxes, insurance, maintenance, and other costs specific to your situation. Number 3, will I actually invest the difference? Be brutally honest. Not what you wish you'd do. What would you actually do? Number 4, how much cash will I have left after buying? Because becoming a homeowner with zero emergency savings isn't financial strength, it's financial fragility. Number 5, am I buying because I want the house or because I feel behind? That's a huge difference. And number 6, what else could I do with my down payment? Because that $41,500 isn't just money sitting there, it's an investment decision. The $41,500 you don't see. Remember the $41,500 down payment? Imagine you invested that money instead. At an average 7% annual return over 30 years, it could grow to roughly $337,000. And that's before adding the monthly investment difference. Again, this does not prove that renting wins. It proves something more important. Every financial decision has an opportunity cost. When you put $41,500 into a house, you are choosing not to put that $41,500 somewhere else. And that's the part people often forget. The real cost of losing flexibility. Now imagine 2 people. Person A stretches to buy that $415,000 house. Their monthly housing cost is around $3,300. They have very little cash left. 6 months later, their company offers them a huge promotion, but it's in another city. They can't easily move, because now they own a house. Then their car breaks down. $2,800 repair. They don't have enough cash, so they put it on a credit card. They're not irresponsible. They're not bad with money. They're simply overextended. Now look at person B. They rent the same $2,100 place. They invest the difference. They keep more liquidity. 18 months later, they get that same job opportunity. They move. No house to sell. No closing costs. No waiting for a buyer. And when their car breaks down, they have cash. That's the value of something we rarely put into the spreadsheet. Optionality. The ability to change your mind. The ability to move. The ability to handle an emergency. The ability to say yes when a great opportunity appears. That flexibility has a financial value too. So, should you buy? Maybe, and maybe not, because buying a home isn't stupid, and renting isn't automatically smart. A home can give you stability, privacy, control over your space, a sense of permanence, and eventually the possibility of owning an asset outright. Those things matter. But buying a house simply because rent is throwing money away is not a financial strategy. It's a slogan, and slogans don't know your numbers. Here's what I would do this week. Take the home you're actually considering, not some hypothetical house, your house. Calculate the mortgage, add property taxes, add insurance, estimate maintenance. Then compare that number with the rent for a similar place. Next, calculate what happens if you invest the difference. Then calculate what happens to your down payment if you invest it instead. And finally, Ask yourself one brutally honest question. If nobody knew whether I rented or owned, which option would I choose? Because that question removes something powerful. Pressure. Your parents don't get a vote. Your coworker doesn't get a vote. Your cousin's fiance's dad doesn't get a vote. Instagram doesn't get a vote. Only your numbers do. You're not behind. You're not ahead. You're not failing because you rent. And you're not automatically wealthy because you bought a house. You're just making a financial decision. And the smartest thing you can do is stop asking, what are successful people supposed to do? And start asking, what actually makes sense for me? Because once you know your numbers, you don't need anyone else to tell you whether you're behind. So tell me, are you renting right now, planning to buy, or stuck somewhere in the middle? And if you want more videos where we ignore the financial cliches and actually run the numbers, subscribe. Because sometimes the best financial advice isn't complicated. It's just the advice nobody bothered to calculate.